Welcome to Real Talk, Conversations with Angel. Tonight's conversation is on the Black community and rebuilding the Black family. Our community is in crisis and has been for quite a while. Tonight, we're going to discuss, and I want to hear from you about the number of Black families that are broken. We're going to discuss the reality of children growing up in single parent households has caused a crisis in our community where our children are suffering because of selfishness on the part of adults. The core values, years ago, I did a blog called Core Values, and it talked about family, faith, and the importance of building the Black community. And so tonight, I want to give some statistics on the Black family. Let's discuss how we can rebuild our community. It is very important for us as a people to come back together and not believe the old adage of crabs in the bucket. I got mine, you get yours. We were less educated in the early 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s than we are now. We have more knowledge, but we have not become wiser. We have become weaker. We have become weaker, falling into the pitfalls of commercialism, falling into the pitfalls of do your own thing. And so let's talk about how you and I and others can come together to rebuild, reshape, remold our community and make it whole again. When we emulate that which is less than us, then we too become less. And at one time, I do believe we looked at another race of people and thought, well, they have it going on because they had more finances than us. When the whole objective was to break us apart so that they could subject us to a subservient lifestyle. So I'm going to give you some statistics. Between 1970 and 22, the proportion of children living with Black mothers in single parent households increased for the Black community for 29%, 29.5 to 45.6. That's almost half of the children growing up in a Black household without a mother and a father. Now, we increase from 29% to 46%. Now, let's compare that to the white community who was at 7.8%. So let's say 8%, and they went to 16%. So already we were more than double what the white community was in single parent households. And now almost half of our children are growing up without both parents in the household. That is degradation, a demise on the Black family. And the Willie Lynch of divide and conquer has worked excellently in our family. If you don't know what Willie Lynch is, it was how to break a slave. And a part of breaking a slave was dividing and conquering, making them fight against each other. We as a people knew how at one time to come together to help each other. In the 60s and 70s, there was such a thing as rent parties. When a person didn't have their rent, the whole community would get together and have a rent party so that that person wouldn't lose their household. Now, today, many of us live in huge houses and are single families in these huge houses. and can't have family members living with us because, well, I don't want anyone living off of me. Instead of saying, let me help you build yourself. I have opened my door to many people. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but it was an attempt to help people get on their feet. I'm not making a judgment on you if you don't do that. What I am saying is that we as a community must do better. We must do better for our children. Our children are running rampant in our communities, not thinking they're going to even live to be 18, and they have no value of life. Bringing back the values that many of us older, I consider myself older now, older folks grew up with. In my household when I was growing up, my parent would say that you couldn't look at certain things or you couldn't see certain television shows. And my dad would say, I'm a member of the Legion of Decency, so you're not playing that in my household. And of course, as a child, I would be upset. As a teenager, I'd be upset. But as a grown up, I truly understand where he was coming from. That, what goes in your eyes and your ears are very important. And many of us are not censoring what our children are hearing, what our children are listening to. And it's very important that we come back to ourselves and remember who we are and how we are so that we can rebuild our family. Another statistic that I want to share is the number of Black families with single fathers living in the United States. In 1990, that number was considerably low. It was out of all of America, it was like 472,000. And now in 2022, the statistic is over a million. And so, what I will say is kudos to you, Black daddies, who's taking care of your babies. Okay. But, ladies, since when you are not a mother when you have children? It is not okay. And our foreparents, our grandparents, our grandmothers taught us better. They taught us to be young ladies. They taught us what it was to be a woman. They taught us to pray, and they definitely taught us to raise children. And so the fact that I'm not knocking daddies raising their children because they have every right to raise their children. It should be both of you. But since it is not, I want to know those million women out there who just say, well, you know, um, just like I can do it, he can do it too. Girl, slap yourself. Where's your babies? Why aren't you being a mother? Now, I know we have had many epidemics in our community. Drugs have ran rapid in our community, and the ability to help our fellow Americans, our fellow people get off of the drugs is has been a problem because once there were community centers and treatment facilities all over, and that ended in the late 90s. And what you'll see is as long as the concentration of other people was seeking treatment, those treatment facilities were available. And when that dynamic changed and shifted to more of us seeking treatment, now maybe it's my imagination, maybe it's not, but it sure appears to be that way because I could be absolutely wrong, but it appears that when more of us started seeking treatment from the Black community, a lot of those public facilities to help you get off of drugs and alcohol started to close. So I say, ask yourself what's going on. Ask yourself, you know, Are we doing everything we can do as a Black community? Now, let me share my screen because I love to share statistics. And we're going to look at some of these statistics together. And so let's look at this statistic right here. U.S. marriage rates have been on the decline since the latter half of the 20th century. Both men and women are marrying at a later age, but the decline and delay are even more dramatic among Black adults. The median age at first marriage has risen for both men and women. In 1970, the median age at first marriage was 23.2 years for men and 20.8 years for women. 50 years later, those figures are 30.5 years for men and 28.1 years for women. For all groups, the percentage of never married men in 1970 was 28% and 22% for women. Now, but from the 2020 census, 35.8% of men are not getting married and 30% of women. Now, Black men is at 35% for men, 35.6, so that's 36%, and 28%, 27.7 for women. Now, you have to ask yourself, you know, what is the reason for such a major decline in those people wanting and not wanting to get married? Well, I personally believe it has to do with the do what you want lifestyle and not taking responsibility, because if the birth rate would decline consistently with this data, then we would be able to say, okay, well, they're just not marrying and having children, but the birth rate has not declined proportionally with the number of men and women who just are never getting married. Other statistics that I want to share with you is educational statistics. And so I'm going to share my screen again. And let's look at that, because I think it's quite interesting that if you look from 1960 all the way to 2020, the percentage of Blacks finishing high school went from 41% all the way to 90% of Blacks in America finish high school. But also look at the college graduates. In 1960, it was 7.7%. Now, from the 2020 census, it's 37.5%. Now, let's see, if 37.5% out of 100% of the Black community is college educated, please tell me why the statistics in single families, single mothers and fathers raising children have increased. Because you're telling me that in 1970, the number of single parent households was very low, but yet we have attained educational advancements, which means we have some of us have a little bit more financial stability, but yet our children are being raised in single parent households. That is a problem. It is a problem we need to address. When I was being raised by my parents, my father would say, you can't look at this, or you can't listen to this. And I would be upset like any teenager. And he would say, I'm a member of the Legion of Decency. You can't bring that in my household, or you will not watch that. And I did not and could not. And that line has changed now. What's interesting is when I was raising my own children, my children are adults now, but I heard myself saying, I'm a member of the Legion of Decency. and you can't listen to that or you can't watch that. And I had to laugh because I know where I got it from. I got it from my dad. But in the same vein, it is very important for us to start bringing back the morals and values that we as a community had on loving each other, on taking care of each other. In the 60s and 70s, you heard of rent parties. And those rent parties were so that a family would not be on the street. We have bigger houses now with less people living in them. And our community is broken. I want you and I to work together to rebuild the moral fabric of the Black community. Have our youngsters pull up their pants, have them bring them back to the churches, because the pillar and the bedrock of our community was and is and always will be the church, having a God-centered life. And I'm not proselytizing to anyone. I just know that when you take God out of the picture, all kind of devastations happen. And for me, I want to say, I want to be a part of rebuilding our community, of rebuilding our children, so that millions of years when I'm long and gone, our Black community will be thriving and strong with a purpose of raising up our young people to be the pillars of society that we need, the strength of the nation that we need. We are a resilient people, and what doesn't kill us does make us stronger. And so we are not going to allow our community that has been devastated by drugs, alcohol, and the breakage of the Black family to be decimated. We will, you and I will work together to rebuild the Black family. So I hope you'll enjoy this video, and I will make more videos on rebuilding the Black family. Please like it, subscribe, and share.